market is something that you sell something on. It's a platform.
Market is historically, or the majority of the business, is it on e-commerce or is it the physical business? Till this day, e-commerce is a large part, but not as big as the other business. So market is some place where the buyers and seller come together and trading is done, trading happens. So there is exchange of goods and services.
Right.
There is exchange of goods and services in a space. That space is called market. Historically, the concept of market was that people, they used to live in a particular, for example, in very primitive societies, people, they'd all live together, they'd have their houses in a separate place, and marketplace would be somewhere else. All right, they'd go to their marketplace and trade things over there. Then what happened, as societies progressed, uh, there became this concept of a sadar bazaar, or a main market, and within the localities we had separate smaller markets. Within the localities of like housing residences, where people used to live, we had smaller markets in those societies. Okay, then again, as the volume of trade increased, people of a certain trade, they started clustering together. So for example, till this day we have this place. For example, there would be a gold market where all the jewelers would be
Sir,
placed
do
together.
you usually write this on Jamboard?
No. Are you not following me? I mean, is it making you fall asleep?
No, I am following you.
Okay. So no need to read right now. Maybe just focus on the blank screen. Reading part, we'll get to that. Okay. So I was talking about that market. The concept evolved. Previously, it used to be a place where people would come together and they would trade their goods. It used to be some place which was away from the residences. Then, as time progressed, that away place, that market itself got divided. There was a big market where the main trading activity used to happen, and from that big market, some small shop owners, they'd buy their stuff and come and sell in the vicinities of the neighborhoods. And then again, as the volume of trade increased, there were people who were selling, uh, the people of the same trade, they cluster together. So you'd have a market for, let's say, clothes, you'll have a market for um, food, you'll have a market for jewelry, and so on. And now we know that the concept of market has evolved. It no longer has to be a brick and mortar place. It can be based on internet as well. We have e-commerce. We've got Amazon, Daraz, Alibaba, AliExpress, these different marketplaces, eBay. So even the website of any particular shop, where they allow you to buy and sell, where they allow you to buy stuff from them and make payment to them via online methods, those are also included in the concept of market. Okay. With regards to market, we have this concept of market size. How big is a market? Obviously, for market, you might be able to understand that the space occupied by a certain market is not a good yardstick to measure the size of the market. The size of the market is either understood in terms of the units that are sold in that particular market, or they are calculated in terms of revenue that is earned out of that market, or the value of activity that is happening in that market. Make sense? So market size is either made, for example, these mobile phone companies, Apple, Samsung, Google, if you ever measure, if you ever see how they measure the competition amongst themselves, it's either based on how much revenue any of them has generated, or most probably, or more likely the cases, or the more often used metrics is that of the number of units sold for a particular mobile phone. So how much Samsung has sold, how much Xiaomi has sold, how much Apple has sold. So they compete on that. So market size is usually based on these two matrices. Then if the market size is measured in terms of value and in terms of volume, the next thing, market share. How much of this market belongs to a particular market player? That
Sir, what is the volume?
volume is the number of units sold.
Or number and value is the amount.
amount for
of
which
money.
the combined amount for which all the goods in that particular market were traded.
Okay, value and volume. I should remember this, right?
Yes, you'd use this so often that you'll automatically remember this.
Okay.
For this business, this is going to be more likely the case that we'll use the term so often that it would, sit in your brain somewhere. Okay. Market share. The next thing, market share is that out of all this trading activity happening, out of this complete market, what is the size, what is the share of a particular player, or what is the share of a particular sector? So, for example, market share, it could be calculated more. I mean, where we'd be using more often is in case of a particular market. For example, gold market, the jewelry market. We can calculate how much is the market share of the total activity that is happening, how much is the market share of wholesaler or retailer, or we could have various retailers. I mean, this is the total volume of the retail market, how much any particular market, how much any particular seller is selling in that particular market. We'll get to the details of wholesaler and
Sir,
retailer.
what is the retailer and what is
Hmm.
wholesale?
We'll get to that in a bit. Just to give you a concept, somebody who is buying goods in bulk and
Is
then
a
selling
wholesaler.
to other producers, sorry, not producers, to other shop owners, to other businesses for further sale.
Uh-huh.
That is a wholesaler. But why does he do that? Why does he not sell to the general public?
In wholesale, you get cheaper,
Hmm.
and retailers. I don't know why wouldn't he?
We'll get to that. There are a few problems with being in the retail, or the reason for being in the wholesale. We'll get to that later on. Okay, so the retailer, he'd buy from the wholesaler, and then he would. So all these brands, these shops where you go in the market and the shopping malls and you buy from them, those are the retailers. And the person from whom they have bought the goods is more likely to be a wholesaler. Usually, they'll be getting their stuff from the wholesaler. Okay,
Uh-huh.
the wholesaler would in turn be getting his stuff from either a specified agent by the producer or by the producer themselves. This whole
Okay.
supply chain we'll study later on. Okay, so
Okay.
we were talking about the market share. The market share is that how much is the sale or the output of a particular business as compared to that of the whole market. So,
I know what it is for cold drinks.
you know what it is for cold drinks? They say others have 44.8%, Samsung has 23.2%.
Is this
This
old?
graph seems to be old because Huawei, I guess, had overtaken both Samsung and Apple. At least it had overtaken Apple. Sometime back then, they put sanctions on Huawei and China.
I
And
know that. I remember that.
hmm, okay, so this is with regards to market share. Then certain goods, they are sold as brands, and there are many goods which are sold unbranded. Can you tell me a few of each of these two categories? Which particular goods do you think are sold, or are you aware of, are sold as branded, and which particular things are not?
Uh, Stuff that are branded.
Examples of a few products.
Materialistic thing like clothes, the phones, blah blah blah.
They are branded. Okay,
Yeah.
and then
And necessities like I don't know, maybe water.
for example, water. Even water, the mineral bottled water is sometimes sold as brand. Uh, Rice, vegetables in UAE. I don't know if it's that of, even in UAE. If you get your vegetable from a particular market, the vegetable is not branded. That tomatoes of a particular brand, or let's say bananas of a particular brand. It's just that these are tomatoes and these are. So where do you think,
Sometimes.
why is it that certain goods are sold as branded and certain are not?
Some of them are necessities, so everyone buys them anyways. Branded, I feel like it's because it's I don't know. They just
Brand.
want it to have a good name, so they
Okay,
feel like it's a premium item.
if people could, they would make brands out of necessities as well. If the sellers could, they would make brands out of necessities as well, because brand, it establishes the brand name, it establishes both the prestige and the clientele for that particular brand, so it's easy to retain customers. That's why those who do branding, they go for it. Those who don't go for branding is the reason being that they can't differentiate their product. So for example, how could I make my potatoes better than yours? Or would people be convinced that potatoes I am selling are better than what someone else is selling?
I mean, if it's like chips, you can do it.
Potato chips, you can do it, but raw potatoes, raw vegetable, it's difficult to do. Okay. The second thing is that from unit to unit, for example, if you get one mobile phone of Apple, let's say iPhone 13, and you get another one, iPhone 13, they'd both be the exact same. Whereas for the fruit, if you are going to buy fruit from a particular fruit seller, you go to him once. There is no guarantee that the second time you go and buy fruit from him, it would be of the same quality as that of before. I mean, he'd be trying to maintain some level of quality, but not. It wouldn't be that precise as it was in the case of the mobile phones, for example, or clothes, for example, the manufactured goods. With manufacturing, we get control over the output. With the naturally produced material, we have little control over the output. I mean, not as much control as we have in case of the manufactured goods. So here would be a few advantages of branding. I discussed a few. You'll be able to differentiate your product from that of the rival. You'll be able to create customer loyalty, not royalty, loyalty. Okay, you'll be able to develop a brand image for your product, and with branding, you could be. I mean, rice is, for example, a case. Rice usually they are sold as like rice, but if you are able to create a brand out of rice, or spices, there isn't much difference if you buy a spice of this particular brand or that particular brand. But just because they are the one point of having a brand is to somehow establish the fact that the good that I am selling, similar good is being sold by other people, but not the same.
Right.
Okay, so my product is better than theirs, therefore I demand a better price. Okay. uh even okay, let's see till here. Then dynamic markets which are fixed in terms of their, for example, market size, or the way trading is happening in that market, or the sort of products that are being sold in that market. That is a static market. Whereas most of the markets, they're dynamic in the sense that the prices of the products might be changing, the type of the products that are being traded in the market are changing, the way the products are being sold in the market, that is changing. So such markets, if the features of the market are changing, the features that we just discussed, it could be that even the market share of different market players, it keeps on changing. That would also classify as a dynamic market. Okay. Here they have mentioned example of Kodak. Kodak, I would have used the example somewhere else, but just to tell you the story, early in the 90s, they were the global leaders in this photography business. Okay, they used to produce the cameras. They used to produce their major business was
I know this.
the films.
They like first discovered digital cameras, and then they did not make it because they thought they'll run themselves out of business because people will stop buying and something. And then anyway, some other company did it, and then they went out of business.
So that's an example. This is also used as an example of where the market or the industry is dynamic, the industry is changing, the business fails to keep itself up with the trends in the industry, hence it gets wiped out.
Why do I know that?
Could be that I mentioned this example earlier, or could be that one of your teachers mentioned this example earlier.
No, I think I know this since like grade 5 for some reason. Wow, finally I used this information for something.
Okay, good. Okay, then we have got this online retailing phenomena. Online retailing is where things they get traded in the online market. So we have got these big platforms. We have got Daraz in Pakistan. Obviously, in UAE there would be a few. Then there is Amazon, eBay, which are internationally famous. So all different sorts of products, they are listed on their websites, and people they can order from different parts. So what are the features, what are the benefits or the downsides of this online retailing that you can think of?
customers won't be able to see the products, right?
Hmm. So,
Sometimes,
so
so
how would that be a problem? I mean, would that be a good thing or a
they
bad thing?
would be suspicious
They
on
could be suspicious that,
quality.
I mean, if I'm not able to touch, or what if the product that I actually get is different from the one that's being displayed on the internet? All right, that's one.
Yeah. And there are not. I mean, there aren't any sales people to like try to nudge you towards buying it. You
Is that
just,
good or bad?
I mean, it's good. It's bad because most of the time, I feel like if someone's like nudging me to buy something, I lean more towards buying it rather than buying it
So
online.
wouldn't that get you into unnecessary buying things that you might not be needing, but just because of nudge from a particular salesperson, you end up buying that thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
On the other hand, uh, we have got these online retailers which have different ways of asking for information with quote unquote making with the purpose of making customer experience better.
Also, yeah. Also, the this thing like payment thing.
There is this issue that what's the guarantee that if I make the payment, will I even get the good or not? Bad or good is a later question, but would I even be getting the good or not? So the trust between the seller and the buyer, that if buyer makes the payment, would the seller be able to deliver on his promise of delivering the good? Okay, what else? It reduces the costs of selling. So for online businesses, both advertising is very cheap. Also, you need not have a particular shop. You could be having your merchandise in the basement of your house or in some vacant room in your house. Who knows?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it reduces the cost of production, cost of operation for sellers.
Uh huh.
What else? I mean, if it reduces the cost of operations for sellers, then it's like
More
easier for
profit.
more profit, number one, and it's easier for smaller sellers to make their way into the market. You are not barred by that barrier to entry that you have to make this huge investment to start a business.
Right.
What else?
Uh, and
uh, for the person who is buying, it's more difficult to go from store to store to browse things to look for the different variants. it's
people are
e-
lazy. There are no queues.
so it's easier to open a separate tab and open a separate shop, let's say, or a different platform and compare the two things.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Easier to, I mean, carry out deals for the producers. It's a lot easy to gauge the information of the traffic, but sort of people are coming, the data analytics part of the business, it gets easier because information is automatically being stored in your systems based on the traffic of people, and you don't have to you require your customers to fill out forms and then be dependent on that for the data.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Marketing costs less, we have already discussed, can reach a higher number of customers. Similarly, these international borders thing, it becomes easier for me to sell products in China, Russia, USA, UK. It's more easy based on these internet platforms as compared to if I have to actually visit those countries and then uh,
Right.
get
Yeah.
customers from those people, from those
Yeah.
countries. Okay, okay. So shall would you like to do reading at this point of time, or shall I just keep explaining and you do the bulk reading in the end?
No, you read for me.
Okay. Start of the chapter till this point, how markets change. Before this point, you can read, and then we can discuss how markets change.
Okay. Can't see it actually. How much?
Would you read from my screen, or shall I send you the link to the book?
I'll read from your screen, but you can send me the link as well.
Okay.
Right now, let me read from your screen.
Mhm. In fact, I'll have to zoom out to get the complete page on the screen. Hopefully, you can zoom in and read whichever particular part you want to.
I can't, but it's fine. You're sending it, right, by the way?
Let me. Gmail. Okay.
Okay, sir. Let me just read it later on.
Okay. The book is test, and it would get sent as a link because it's around 223 MB. Perfect. Okay. So the reading is set later on. Why would markets change, and how would
Why would
markets change?
markets change? Why would markets change, Jason?
And how would markets change? Both
Uh,
questions.
they would change to adapt to newer technology to make it easier for the buyer and the seller at the same time.
Hmm.
And why is the first question? So how now, right?
Hmm.
So it would change uh,
The
by
most obvious one is that the size of the markets change. So the quantity of or the volume of trade happening, that increases. So online retail, e-commerce, we know each passing year the numbers are increasing. And with this pandemic, the numbers obviously increased manifolds as people couldn't go out and visit stores and personally buy things. So they did it online. Okay. The next thing is that the for example, the nature of the market has changed. So for example, if later on it just happens to be the norm that online teaching platforms are so developed that all this thing happening, physical education, it gets shifted online, or a large chunk of it, that would be an example of nature of change of market. Similarly, again, this e-commerce phenomena, this thing is becoming more trendy, that people, they are now even with these stores, since the cost of operation, it goes down when they are operating an online store, they have got better offers for customers who are purchasing things from them online. Okay,
Uh-huh.
so they are themselves trying to shift this market towards the online mode. The other thing is that new opportunities open up. So for
Uh-huh.
example, new opportunities they could open up in the way that uh, the countries they reach an agreement that they would facilitate trade with each other. EU, it has got very strict conditions with regards to what sort of things you can sell in Europe. Let's say a country it reaches a trade agreement with Europe, the EU, and they say that all right, these particular types of your products they qualify, they fit our criteria for the imports, and you're now allowed to sell in this market. So since you're now allowed to sell in that market, the a new market is now accessible to these people. Similarly, what else could be an example of a new market?
Uh,
Usually, it's when the countries or regions they enter into trade agreement with each other, and the trade agreement is of the nature that we facilitate trade with one another. There is an international organization with the name WTO, World Trade Organization. It's like a sub-organization of United Nations. The purpose of World Trade Organization is to facilitate trade between countries. So it encourages countries, or it draws. It comes up with global policies using which the countries they could enhance trade with one another or provide them forums. So that is also one way new markets they come about. Okay, innovation. Obviously, if a country it achieves economic growth. Economic growth means that it's producing more output. The term that we use is GDP. GDP is what? Gross domestic product. So in a rough way, we'll get to the actual calculation of GDP later on in later terms. But right
isn't
now,
it just the salary of all of the
it's
people
calculated.
divided by the population?
That's GDP per capita.
Okay.
So not only the people, the business organizations. So there are a few ways of calculating GDP. One is that the final value of all the output that has been created in an economy in a particular year. That's the GDP. And the other way of calculating GDP is to add up incomes of all the peoples and all the organizations in a particular economy.
Mm-hmm.
That would also give GDP. And then GDP in itself isn't such a good yardstick to compare the economic progress of the countries with each other. Usually we calculate GDP
Because
per
some people
capita.
have, because some people might have the large share of
Some
capital.
no no some countries they have more people. So just by virtue of having more people, their output is more.
No, like in India as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, like the per capita, it'll probably be really high. But if you go to see, not everybody has that capital.
Huh.
It's just
That
so.
thing is called the problem of distribution of wealth or
Yep.
income distribution within a country. That is measured using a tool called Gini coefficient. It's not in your course right now, but just since you raised this point, I'm telling you, if Gini coefficient is high, it means that the difference between the rich and poor, the income distribution is more skewed. Some people they have a lot of income, some people their income is a lot less.
I think I already knew this for some reason.
Gini coefficient.
Yeah.
Maybe while you were sleeping, somebody played the economics lectures around you. Okay. Similarly, the new markets they come about with innovation. So people developing new products. A Bitcoin, it wasn't traded 20 years ago. Now it's a product. It's being let's say traded across the globe.
Uh-huh.
Similarly, these online meeting platforms. Previously, it wasn't such a big thing. 20 years ago. Now with the
Even one
passive
year ago.
before pandemic.
Yeah.
Mm. It was just in use with the businesses. It wasn't
Uh-huh.
as often used. For example, people they'd connect on social media, but this phenomena of let's say meetings, online meetings, yes, it's entirely new. Uh, Another different type of innovation. Self-driving cars. Okay,
Did you see Google came up with that recently? Now they're planning on making an app for it.
the idea has been around for some time. The idea hasn't has been around for some time. It's just that they haven't been able to deliver make a lot
Yeah,
of
they
progress
have.
on
They
ground on
have.
it.
They have.
Uh,
Check Google right now. You can.
hmm,
This thing. What they did right now is the only problem is just in case because people are gonna be scared, obviously, because new technology, blah blah blah.
hmm,
So they have decided to slow down on the process of making it go global, but they're slowly but surely they're making it bigger and bigger, and because the machine needs more data. So the
hmm,
more the machine runs,
hmm,
the more data it
hmm.
has, so
True,
more experience it has,
true.
less accidents. So right now they
Hmm,
managed to make it so that the 99%,
hmm,
like 99 point something percent, it's never gonna like crash.
hmm,
If you compare that to humans, apparently it's like 80 something.
hmm,
So it's better in general, like, but
hmm,
people won't understand that,
hmm,
and so nobody's gonna buy
hmm.
it. So they'll keep waiting.
By the time we are finished with this course on business, the 2 year course, you'll be able to realize that these global giants, they never stop or they never pause their business plans just because the people might be afraid. This you'll
That's what they
realize.
said.
This is what you'll be convinced about by the end of this 2 year term.
I
Okay.
mean, they won't. I understand that, but they're still doing it because they need to make themselves 100%. It's Google. They don't want to ruin their reputation.
Mhm.
That's what I'm trying to
All
say.
right, all right, all right. Similarly, another example of innovation is the lending. It largely used to happen by these banks. Okay, these
What is
commercial banks.
landing
Lending, Lending.
or
Lending is
lending?
getting loans. Okay,
Uh,
so then
Haram, astaghfirullah. Okay.
yes, interest. Okay, then there was this idea that when I don't know, since I haven't been around outside Pakistan much, but you might be able to confirm or deny this thing. When you get your prepaid plans, sometimes you run out of balance, right? So your mobile company, it allows you to loan a small amount, a very small amount.
Uh huh.
Let's say 10 rupees, 30 rupees, 50 rupees for up to a month until you are able to find a place from where you can recharge your prepaid plan. Okay,
Uh huh.
so they were offering this for some time, then they realized that we are sort of offering loans. Why restrict ourselves to offering loan just for the mobile phone recharge?
Was that loan of interest?
They call it service charges, but that's in a way interest, yes.
Oh my god, I think I've done it so many times on my
Hmm,
phone.
hmm. So uh, uh, this is something that they had been doing for some time. Then they realized now this the other thing is that around 2016, I guess, there was this Nobel Prize given to economics Nobel Prize given to Yunus Habib, an economist from Bangladesh, and he was running a Grameen bank over there. What he did was and he wasn't given Nobel Prize of economics. I'm sorry, he was given Nobel Peace Prize, I believe. But
Peace price.
what his work was that he sort of led the let's say infrastructure for distributing massive microfinance loans to the Bangladeshi population. And since then, they have progressed a lot. Those microfinance loans, they have played a big part in the let's say upliftment of the lower segments of the society. They're interest based loans. I mean, un-Islamic. I'm not endorsing that in Islamic point of view, but the thing is that when we get to the finance portion, we'll see that these large traditional banks, they were largely focused on commercial loans and big amount loans, and there are reasons they don't get into small amount. So these microfinancing loans, they are as small as, let's say, 1,000 rupees to 50,000 rupees. Okay,
Uh huh.
just enough so somebody opens a basic shop, a very basic. Maybe he buys a goat, maybe he buys a buffalo or a cow, maybe he just buys a sewing machine, that person, and just to get things kicked off. So this was a sort of innovation that you can offer microfinancing loans, and then on top of that, these mobile phone companies realized that they have been offering these loans to their customers, just that they have been offering it for the plan, the prepaid plan. Why not they offer it for other things as well? So all these mobile phone companies now, they have got these microfinance banks as well, whereas by virtue of your mobile phone, through your mobile phone you can get a loan. And obviously this market is risky. The pros and cons are great. Again, there was this book that I mentioned you some time ago and recommended it, AI Superpowers. In that particular book, he specifically discusses it in very detail how China used this particular concept for innovation and the
What concept? What concept? I forgot.
microfinancing through mobile phone.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. And they have this, the same, the way we have this application WhatsApp, they have this application QQ is just a very, let's say, advanced substitute of WhatsApp. On WhatsApp you can just send messages. On QQ you can send messages, you can even do e-commerce, you can have your payments processed through QQ.
I mean, it's just Facebook then.
uh, it's even advanced than Facebook. Facebook does
Facebook Market. Facebook has
does
Facebook
Facebook does
Market.
Facebook Marketplace offer you loans? Can you borrow from Facebook?
You can loan from QQ. What nonsense.
Hmm. and and it's not that it's completely unsecured. They have data, they have yardstick that which person is a risky person to lend money to.
Uh-huh.
It's not that it's completely unsecured. So for people with high risk, usually the economic theory is that you compensate that by giving them high interest rates, offering them loan. I mean, the high interest rate is a compensation for high risk. If I'm taking more risk, I need more reward. So the reward for the banker or the lender is interest. So he'd give charge a higher interest. Anyhow anyhow that, and there could be other examples of innovations as well. So uh, social changes, people of number of people working in an economy. So for example, in Muslim society especially, the number of women who work, it was the same in Europe as well, but since industrial revolution, they have sort of seemed to forgotten their past. Even in Europe, men, they were supposed to be the bread earners for the family, and women, they were supposed to look after the household work. But after the industrial revolution, they developed this theory that the more people working, the better. So they had everyone participating in the economic activity, women as well. It had the financial positive outcomes, but obviously it created social costs which they didn't realize, or they didn't care about. Anyhow anyhow the thing is that when social changes happen, new business opportunities arise. So for example, if there is just father of the family, father of the child, he is working, the women, they are looking after the household work and the children. If both parents they start working, then there would be a bigger market for housemaids and daycares.
And the child wouldn't have
I
any
mean,
manners.
that's a, social or ethical question. The point about market, that social change, it can cause, it can, let's say, create market opportunities. So, for example, I'm not talking about positive or negative. If social change happens, that in Muslim societies or even in Eastern societies, this is a largely Eastern phenomenon as of now, that people they take care of the elderly, and they do not have the elderly at the mercy of these old age shelters.
Okay.
But if there is a social change that everybody he is just worried about participating in the economic activity and working, let's say, two jobs a person, um, they wouldn't have as much time to take care of the elderly, and then this business of old age people, it would increase, these old age houses.
Okay.
Okay. Similarly, changes in legislation, they can create business opportunities. So for example, I believe sometime back, now it seems to be a long time back, the US government, they had this legislation that with all these big trucks and trailers, they had to allow a certain tracking device in them. So just because of legislation, there is business for this tracking device. There is this industry which comes about. Just because the
Oh.
government mandates audits, there is room for
PwC, Deloitte.
PwC and Deloitte and EY and KPMG and whatnot.
Why do I know this? Okay.
Okay, demographic changes, they also bring about markets. I don't know about UAE, but if over here in Pakistan, when I watched Net Geo and Discovery Channel, they are usually broadcasted, not the Asia broadcasting, they show the European broadcasting. And one big difference is that for the European broadcasting, very often you see an ad about painkiller, an ad about Alzheimer's medicine, an ad about brittle bones
Yeah.
medicine, something related
So
to that.
for
Old
everything we
age
give
problems,
Panadol.
old age problems. The
Uh-huh.
reason being that in their society, the population of old people is a larger segment of the total population as compared to our society. In Pakistan, more than
Uh-huh.
50% people, they are below 30 years of age.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and then from 31 to 90 and all the way, you have got 50% people. So that big age bracket compared to this small age bracket. So just to give you the point that if the, for example, China, they had this one child policy. Okay, the result, the intended result was
One
that,
child or two child? Oh, one per person. Okay.
okay, so they had this whatever one child or two child policy. The intended result, what
It
they
was
intended
called two
was to,
for two. Okay. I
okay,
got it.
I don't live in China. I don't know. Okay.
I
Uh,
know for whatever reason. Okay.
okay.
Now listen to me.
Okay. Um. So the intended outcome was that they'll be able to control population. Even in West, where they do not have this announced policy, but just by choice, people choose to have less children. Okay. Not as many as there are in Asia, for example, or Southeast Asia, or in the Muslim countries.
Indeed.
The reason then what happens is that right now there are two people looking after one child. Let's say in 30 years there would be one child who would have to look after two people.
Right.
Okay, so these sort of demographic changes, they
But
happen.
on that child have to look after two people plus another person plus another person plus another person
Hmm, hmm,
depending on how many
hmm, hmm,
children or wives he has.
The thing is that these demographic changes, like what segment of population belongs to what age bracket, these things change, and based on the change of these things, for example, in such societies, you'll also see a lot of ads on retirement plans.
Uh-huh.
Okay, since,
Florida for whatever reason
okay, okay,
because
no,
it has the cheapest tax
uh,
also for whatever reason.
retirement plans not only for relocation, retirement plans in terms of investment and the incomes that you get, insurance, life insurance, and those sort of things as well.
Oh yes.
Okay, so we have already discussed about businesses, they have to adapt to change. One example of Kodak, we have already discussed. Even if you look at these big businesses, Microsoft, for example, it initially it initially grew as a operating system business, right? Right now, operating system is not. It was solely like 100% of their output or their market was of operating systems.
Now they
Now,
have everything.
now they have everything, because times have changed, and with time they have changed and they have explored other markets and they have put their foot in those other markets as well. Some they have missed out on, for example, businesses which did not adopt to change. One example is
Phones.
Kodak, the other example is Nokia.
I
That,
was gonna say, sir, stop stealing my topic.
okay,
Okay.
okay, then adapting to this change, it depends a lot on market research. You have to be aware of the current trends, as well as you have to make projections about the future, because by the time change has already happened, it's
Extrapolating.
extrapolating the data. So by the time the change has already happened, it's too difficult to now enter that market and be on the same footing as other players, because these big companies, the big technology companies or otherwise big players, they have a lot of investments.
I
So
mean, Google didn't mind doing it.
didn't mind doing what?
They were so late on smartphones, but they still started it in like 2017 or 18. I don't remember.
Is there still
Google.
around?
Yeah, they're still around. They're doing good as well.
Which one is it?
Just Google something. Google phone.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You don't know about it? There's no way.
Maybe I heard about it. My brother keeps telling me. I keep forgetting. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Google Pixel, yeah. Google Pixel. That's what it's called.
Pixel is their phone.
Yeah, Google Pixel.
They keep on developing technology as often as they keep on discarding it as well. Uh, I don't know if you remember or not. Sometime back they had this Google Glass.
Did they? I think I've seen parody on it, but I didn't think it was real.
It was supposed to be a revolutionary product, but somehow it was a
Was it the
big flop.
GPS thing? Blah blah blah.
Uh,
Assistant.
they had this. You put on these spectacles, and there is glass in front of just one eye, partial small glass, and in
Uh-huh.
that you are able to. I think it made use of this virtual reality or augmented reality.
Uh-huh.
Augmented reality, I guess. Okay. 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 Then there is this phenomena that you have to continuously improve, and you have to be aware of the environment around you and keep yourself in check with how other are performing, those ahead of you as well as those behind you. Another thing is that should the business develop a niche, there are two types of businesses. There are those who do mass marketing, so they have a simple basic product which is like for a big market, and the more you let's say refine your product, the smaller the market is for that product. So for example, I teach, let's say, a person in education business. He is teaching all levels, he is teaching all subjects, and he is into education. Then a person says, no, I'll be just teaching up to high school. He has eliminated that prospect of those students who are above the high school, that education market. Then he says, I develop a further niche, I'll be just teaching these IGCSE and A levels students. So he has further limited his market to this smaller niche, and within that smaller market he can keep on magnifying and further. The question is,
Ah,
what are the pros and cons of develop operating in a niche market and operating in a mass market?
okay. In a mass market, product is more general, and
Hmm.
so more people will buy it for whatever reason. I don't know why they would. Like chips, for example,
Hmm.
they'd buy lace
Hmm.
because lace. It's lace,
Hmm.
but some people would prefer uh, some homemade or like sort
Hmm.
of fried or cooked.
Okay.
Even no.
Hmm.
Let me finish.
I was just
Okay.
about to improve your point. I mean, state it in a different way.
I was also going to state my same point in a different way that I
Hmm.
forgot.
Hmm.
So you
Okay.
can state it.
So you were about to say that with mass market, the risk of failure declines because there is this huge market before you, and you'd get at least some share out of it.
Right.
With the niche market, the risk of failure is high.
Specification of people. So gluten free, for example.
Hmm. But with niche market, you can charge higher price premium on top of your cost.
Indeed, indeed.
Since in mass market the competition is higher, you don't have that much room of charging a higher price for your product. It's a mass market and a generic product, so why would people pay you more? And the more you ask for money, the lesser is the demand for your product. What else?
What else you say? People with specific needs or disabilities, they will require such products, and they will probably be more loyal to the niche market products than the people who are buying general products. If you understand what I mean.
So with niche products, you can develop more customer loyalty, and a slightly, I mean, same point, a slightly different tangent. Uh, with mass market, it's easy for big businesses to operate in. Once you're operating at a huge scale, you can't offer a variant for the product for every small segment of the market. You'll just be offering a you have at least a minimum scale, that at least there has to be this particular number of people. If it's not more than that, then you won't be offering that product, that particular variant of your product. So it
Right.
gives room for smaller businesses to identify certain niche, and then make their entry into the market developing on those niche. So they can start their business on those niche, and once they reach a certain particular scale, then they can move into the mass market, or they can keep on exploiting that niche. Okay. uh,
Exploiting. Okay.
Exploiting is usually has a bad connotation, but here we use it for
You can
both
call it a
positive.
cash cow. You keep milking it.
We'll get to cash cows too, but later on.
Is that
Okay.
a thing? There's no way.
there is
Okay,
there
nice.
is this Boston Consulting Group. They have developed a matrix, and in that matrix they have categorized four types of products. So there is cash cows, there is dogs, there is stars, and there is question mark or problem child.
Oh wait, I know this. I know this. I know this.
Okay, maybe they discussed it in your
I
class.
think they, yeah, I think they did. I don't know this properly because I wasn't there for the class, but
Hmm.
I saw it on Google Classroom. That's why it came into my head.
Okay, what effect does competition have on businesses, and what effect does it have on consumers?
What is competition?
What is competition?
No, did you say what is?
No,
Did you?
I said, what is the effect of competition on businesses, and what is its
Um,
effect on consumers?
Competition on businesses means that they have to be dynamic, like the dynamic. One second.
Hmm.
Okay, sir.
Hmm.
Yes, I'm back.
So you were telling me about the effect of competition on businesses and consumers.
Okay, competition. Okay, the businesses would have to be dynamic because the market is dynamic, and the consumers would have better products as the businesses will compete to create the best product for the best prices. So they will have to try to impress the customer, the consumer to the max for
Hmm.
them to
Hmm.
prefer
Hmm.
them
Hmm.
over any other
Hmm.
product.
Hmm. So, in economic theory, usually it is taught that the more the number of uh, sellers, the better it is for consumers, because they'll have more variety of goods. The sellers, they'd compete over prices, so they'd be offering lower prices. Usually when there are few sellers, they resort to monopoly practices, they resort to collusion, they resort to price fixing agreements and such things. They have more exploitation power. So the government, and either the government or a particular body made by the government, they'd be responsible to keep the markets in check. So for example, in Pakistan we have this competition commission. It keeps on monitoring, and if a business reaches a certain uh, magnitude of a certain level, then they have to particularly observe that big business, that does it resort to these monopoly practices or not. In US it has happened that they once, some time back, they realized that these oil companies, they had grown so big that they broke those companies down into smaller sub companies.
Even this the government, the U.S. government sued Google because apparently they were monopolizing everything. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's another thing.
Being a monopoly is not as bad as exploiting the customers. So if you become a monopoly and then exploit the customers, exploit your power,
I
then
mean,
that is when you
they
get into
now have
trouble.
all our information, so I don't.
Okay.
But
Okay.
they do provide me with a quick Google search, so I don't care.
Hmm. That is what they feed on. I don't care. Okay. Okay.
They
What's
could
the
literally find me in like 2 seconds. Isn't that crazy? They have every single information they would ever need. Did you see this video of Veritasium, the new one
uh,
on the DNA thing?
I have I saw one this long time running evolution experiment.
No, no. How the government has most of our DNA without us actually putting our DNA anywhere.
I don't know. Fingerprints?
Uh,
I don't know.
no, you would just look at the video. It's crazy.
I will after the class. I will. I
Like,
will. So the last topic for this chapter is what is the difference between risk and uncertainty?
okay.
What is it?
Risk, you probably have reward. Uncertainty, you just don't know. I don't know.
Hmm. Risk is what businesses they are engaged in all the time. So, for example, we say that there are four factors of production. There is land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Land is all the naturally occurring resources.
Sell,
Okay. Land is all the naturally occurring resources. Labor is
sell,
all the people willing and able to
sell,
work in an economy. And
sell.
what sell?
Battery wala sell.
What about that?
CELL. Capital, enterprise, land, labor. I learned it.
Wow.
Are you
Okay.
proud?
Okay. Then capital is all the man-made goods which help us produce more goods or help us generate revenues, and enterprise are the people who are managing other three factors of production. So with enterprise, they since they manage the other three FOPs, for example, land would not on its own start producing crops. Labor on its own, it would not start operating in a corporate environment or otherwise. Capital machines, they would not start producing things on their own. Somebody has to make the decision to what use should they put these resources, what use should they make of land, labor, and capital available. So enterprise are the one, the entrepreneurs are the one who are making this decision. So they are managing these other three FOPs as well as they are taking risks. So the
What
risk
is the
is
FOP? What is FOP?
factors of production.
Factor of production. Okay.
Okay, these cell they are combined called factors of production. So the risk they are taking is that what if this land, labor, and capital, they have their fixed returns, they do their job, they demand their return, they have established a legal right over it. But the entrepreneur, the return of entrepreneur is whatever is a residual amount in the business. So whatever gets left after making these factor payments, that would be the reward for the entrepreneur. So he is at the risk that the combination of land, labor, and capital which he is utilizing, what if it does not generate enough revenues so that he is left with any amount after having paid made the factor payments. So that is the risk that this entrepreneur is taking. Uncertainty is simply that we do not know. For this risk, he assumes a certain reward, and the higher the risk, the higher the reward should be. The higher if with higher risk there isn't higher reward, then it's foolishness to pursue such a thing.
Uh-huh.
Okay, either in short term or in long term, the risk it should be matched with reward. With uncertainty, there is no question of reward. I mean, you don't know what would happen. It could be a positive outcome, it could be a negative outcome, but it's totally beyond your control. With risk, the input is at least in your control. With uncertainty, at times, even the input isn't in your control. So
Uh-huh.
there is a risk that the combination that the business I'm pursuing, it would not produce profits, but there is uncertainty over a bad employee whether he'd show up for work or not tomorrow. Okay,
Uh-huh.
his coming, that particular event happening, you have no control over it. With risk, you have control. You can maneuver the factors of production. You can increase, decrease one. You can put them to a different use. So you have some control over things. With uncertainty, you have none.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the complete first chapter. I'd strongly encourage you to go through this one, and maybe even attempt these exam paper this case based questions.
I don't know how to answer the questions.
Just give it a go. Give it a go. In the next class, I'll evaluate your answers.
Uh, Next class. Good
Okay.
one.
Okay. Define, you just give definition. Explain, you give definition plus you use a sentence or two to further elaborate that phenomenon. In discuss, you give both sides of the argument, for the argument and against the argument.
Okay.
In assess, you give just one-sided argument.
Uh, do you?
You do.
You sure?
Hmm.
Okay.
This thing would be visible in the mark scheme or examiner report as well. I'll show you from there as well. For Cambridge, I mean, seen the documents. I'll send you that document as well that I had.
Sir, I
Uh,
won't look at any documents. Trust me.
as of now, yes, but later on you'd need that. Okay. Did you practice any past paper questions during the day, by the way?